streets of the ruined alien city were filled with broken metal, old stone, and shadows. Tall alien towers leaned like dying giants, their windows shattered and their walls scarred from war. Among the ruins, people walked with empty faces, ignoring everything except their own survival. And in the middle of the dust, a little alien girl crawled slowly, dragging her weak body across the ground. Her skin was pale blue, her small legs bent in the wrong way, and her clothes were nothing more than rags. Her eyes, large and glowing faintly, were filled with pain, but also with a silent cry for help. She looked no older than 10 human years, yet her body was so thin it seemed the wind itself could break her. She reached out a trembling hand as strangers passed by, whispering in a soft, broken voice, "Help me!" But no one stopped. Some looked down at her with disgust, some laughed cruelly, and some simply turned their heads away. To them, she was not a child. She was a curse, a burden, something better left forgotten in the dirt. Her people had abandoned her because she could not walk, because her body was weak, and in their eyes, useless. The girl coughed, her small chest heaving with effort, dust filling her lungs as she tried to crawl toward a wall for shade. The sun above burned hot, and her thin skin was blistered. She pressed her face to the cold stone, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. Her heart pounded with fear and loneliness, but more than anything, with the question she could not answer. Why did no one care? Then, footsteps approached, heavy, steady, different from the others. She turned her head weakly and saw something strange. It was a human, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a travel coat covered in dust, with boots that had walked many roads. His face was sharp, his beard rough, but his eyes were alive. They were not empty like the others, not cruel, not blind. They froze when they fell on her broken form lying in the dirt. For a long moment he stood there, looking at her, while the world seemed to hold its breath. The girl swallowed, fear mixing with hope. Would he laugh too? Would he spit like the others? Would he walk away? Her weak voice cracked as she whispered, "Please." The word was so small, so fragile, yet it carried all the pain of her little heart. The man's jaw tightened, his fists clenched at his side. He looked around at the others on the street, his voice low but sharp. Why is she lying here? Why doesn't anyone help her? The aliens nearby only shrugged. One of them sneered and said, "She is broken, cursed, not worth saving." Another laughed and muttered, "If you touch her, human, you'll catch her misfortune too." The human's chest burned with anger, his teeth grinding together. He looked down at the girl again, so small, so weak, her hands clutching at the dust like it was the only thing she had. Her eyes were full of tears, yet behind them there was still a spark, a tiny spark of life fighting not to die. And something inside him moved, something deep and unshakable. He knelt down slowly, ignoring the gasps and whispers of the crowd. The girl flinched, pressing herself against the wall, as if she expected him to hurt her, but instead, he stretched out a hand, his voice softer now. "I'm not going to leave you here." She stared at his hand, her lips trembling, unsure if she dared to believe him. The people around laughed louder, mocking him. "Look at the human, picking up trash. Let him take her. She'll only bring him trouble. Better he carries her than we see her face again." Their voices echoed in the street like poison, but he ignored them all. The human slipped his arms gently under her frail body and lifted her up. She gasped, stiff at first, her little hands shaking as they clutched at his coat. But then, slowly, she rested her head against his chest, as if her body had finally found a place where it could stop fighting. Her breathing came fast, shallow, but there was relief in it, a release of fear. The human looked down at her, his face set with determination. "Don't worry," he whispered, so only she could hear. "I've got you now." The girl's eyes fluttered, her small voice breaking. Why would you help me? And he answered with a truth simple and sharp. Because no one else would. The crowd muttered behind him, their words dripping with scorn, but he tightened his hold on the child and turned away from them. Each step felt heavier, not because of her weight, but because of the choice he had made. He knew it already. By saving her, he was not only carrying a broken girl, he was carrying the anger of a whole city. Still, he did not stop. The girl, half conscious, clung to him like a dying flame clings to the last breath of air. And deep in his heart, the human knew this moment was only the beginning, because no one else had given her a chance. But he would, no matter the cost. The human carried the broken alien girl through the crowded street. His arms steady, though his heart was heavy. Every step he took, more eyes followed him. Whispers spread like smoke, and mocking laughter rose behind his back. To the people of this city, he was not a savior, he was a fool, a man who had picked up something worthless from the dirt. But to the girl pressed against his chest, shivering and weak, he was the first warm light she had ever known. The crowd grew bolder, their voices sharper. One alien woman spat near his feet, her tone full of disgust. Why do you carry her, human? She's nothing but bad luck. Another, taller and rougher, sneered. That girl is broken. She cannot walk. She cannot work. She cannot give life. She is a curse. A group of young ones laughed cruelly, chanting like it was a game. Broken legs, broken fate. Leave her for the worms. The human's jaw tightened, his anger boiling. He wanted to shout at them, to ask if they had forgotten mercy, if they had forgotten what it meant to care. But when he looked down at the girl, her small glowing eyes staring up at him with fear, he kept his voice calm. She whispered, barely audible, "Please, don't let them take me back." He held her closer, his voice firm but low. "No one will take you, not while I'm here." The girl closed her eyes, as if holding those words like a shield. The people around were not moved. They only shook their heads and muttered, "He will regret this." Others laughed, saying, "Humans are soft. Their hearts too weak. He will learn soon enough." The human stopped walking, his boots grinding against the dust. He turned his face toward the crowd, his voice carrying across the street. "Tell me one thing. If she was your daughter, would you leave her here?" Silence spread for a moment, but then came the cruel answer. "She is not our daughter. She is nothing." The words cut deep, but not into him. They cut into the girl, who buried her face in his chest, shaking, his fists clenched so tight his knuckles turned white. Yet he forced himself to breathe, to stay steady, because right now the girl needed strength, not rage. He began walking again, ignoring the eyes that burned into his back, ignoring the stones of words thrown at him. The further he carried her, the louder the voices grew, as if the city itself rejected his choice. Finally, an elder alien stepped forward, leaning on a twisted staff, his voice harsh with age. "Human, listen to me. Leave her here. She was abandoned for a reason." The human stopped, his muscles stiff, his heart torn between reason and compassion. "Why?" he asked, his voice cold. "What reason makes a child unworthy of life?" The elder's eyes narrowed. "Because she cannot walk, because she brings misfortune, because weakness spreads like rot." The human's chest burned with fury, his voice rising louder now. "Weakness does not spread, cruelty does, and you are drowning in it." Gasps rose from the crowd, some in shock, some in anger. The elder spat to the side and turned his back, muttering, "Then her curse will follow you, human, and when it destroys you, do not say we did not warn you." The crowd laughed again, some jeering, some whispering of omens, their hatred clinging to the air like smoke. The girl trembled in his arms, tears running down her cheeks, her small voice shaking. Why do they hate me so much? He looked down at her, his eyes softening despite the storm inside him. They are blind, he whispered. Blind hearts cannot see the worth of a soul, but I see you. Her lips parted slightly, her voice fragile. You see me. He nodded, walking faster now, leaving the poisonous voices behind. Each step away from the crowd felt like a battle won. Yet he knew this war was far from over, for in the shadows, hidden eyes watched him closely. Not everyone laughed. Some looked at him with suspicion, others with fear, and a few with quiet anger. The girl rested her head against his shoulder, her breathing shallow, but she clung to him tightly. He felt the weight of her trust pressing deeper than her small body ever could. He had chosen her, in a world that had thrown her away, and that choice was changing something inside him, something he had not felt in a long time. Purpose. As he reached the edge of the street, he heard one last mocking call behind him. She will bring you nothing but pain, human. He did not turn back, his voice steady as steel. Then let her pain become mine, for I will carry it before I let her suffer alone. The crowd fell silent at those words, the laughter dying on their lips. For a moment, even those who mocked could not hide the sharp edge of shame that cut through them. But the silence did not last. As he turned down a quieter path, the whispers began again, colder this time, whispers of curses, of danger, of punishment that would fall on him for daring to defy their ways. The girl heard them too, and though her eyes were full of tears, there was something else in them now, something small but new, hope, because for the first time in her life, someone had not walked away. For the first time, someone had refused to let the crowd's cruelty decide her fate. She held on to him as if he was the only thing keeping her alive, and in truth he was. The human's heart beat steady, his step strong, but deep inside, he wondered with quiet unease. Had he just saved a child from death, or had he just invited death to follow him? Only time would tell. The human walked quickly through the back alleys of the alien city, his arms still wrapped around the small girl. The crowd's voices echoed in his mind. Mockery, warnings, and curses. But he pushed them away. All that mattered now was the fragile child in his arms, her breathing shallow, her body trembling against his chest. She was light as a feather, yet she carried the weight of an entire world's rejection. He found a narrow passage where the noise of the street could not reach. There he paused, leaning against a cracked wall, trying to catch his breath. The girl stirred weakly, her glowing eyes opening just enough to look at him. Her lips trembled as she whispered, Why didn't you leave me?" The human looked down at her, his voice firm but gentle. "Because no one deserves to be left in the dirt. Not you, not anyone." Her small hands clutched at his coat as though she feared he might vanish. Her eyes filled with tears, but this time, they were not only of pain. They were of disbelief, as if she could not understand why someone would choose her. From the shadows, a sound came. The human turned quickly, his instincts sharp. Two alien figures stood at the end of the alley, their eyes cold, their voices sharp. "You shouldn't carry her, human. Put her down before she brings you ruin." The human's grip tightened on the girl. "She's just a child," he said firmly, his voice echoing off the broken walls, but the aliens only shook their heads, one muttering, "A broken child, nothing more. A curse that eats at whoever shelters it." The other hissed, "If you want to survive here, let her go." The girl whimpered, pressing her face into his chest, her voice trembling. "Please, don't listen to them." The human's heart pounded. He knew he had a choice. Walk away and live safely, or stand against an entire city and risk everything. The weight of the decision pressed down like iron. But when he looked into the girl's frightened eyes, the answer was already clear. He turned his back on the two aliens and kept walking, his voice steady. "I'll carry her, no matter what it costs me." The aliens hissed, their footsteps echoing as they followed for a moment. But when the human did not stop, they finally melted back into the shadows, whispering curses as they vanished. The girl's breath shook as she whispered, "They'll come again. They won't stop." He nodded, his jaw tight. "Then let them come. I won't give you up." After hours of walking through ruined streets, he found an abandoned structure at the city's edge. The walls were broken, the roof half collapsed, but it was shelter, a place away from watchful eyes. He laid the girl gently on an old bench, her frail body sinking into the rough surface. Her glowing eyes followed him as he searched the room, finding scraps of cloth and a rusted pot. He brought water from a cracked pipe outside, giving it to her slowly, drop by drop. She drank like one who had been thirsty for days, her small hands shaking as they clutched the cup. He gave her food from his pack, simple bread and dried meat, but to her it was a feast. She ate with wide eyes, whispering softly, "No one ever gave me food before." The human's chest ached at her words, his fists clenching. How could an entire people abandon a child so completely? He sat beside her, his voice softer now. "You're safe here, at least for tonight." Her eyes searched his face, trembling. "Why do you risk yourself for me, when even my own kind did not?" He looked at her, the weight of his choice heavy but unshakable. "Because you're alive," he answered. "And that is reason enough." The girl's lips trembled, her small voice breaking. "I thought I didn't matter." His hand rested gently on her shoulder. "You matter more than they will ever admit." For a moment, silence filled the broken shelter. The girl leaned against him, her eyes closing, her breathing still weak but steadier now. He watched her, and in his heart, he knew the road ahead would not be easy. But for the first time in years, he felt something strong inside him. A purpose greater than himself. Outside, the wind howled through the ruins, carrying whispers of the city's hatred. He knew the people would not forgive his defiance. He knew eyes were watching, waiting. By saving her, he had drawn a line he could not cross back. He had chosen her over the will of the crowd, and that choice would bring enemies. As night fell, the girl stirred once more, her voice soft as a sigh. "Will you stay when they come?" He looked down at her, his eyes hard as stone. "I'll stay until my last breath." Her tears glistened in the dim light, but this time, they were not only of sorrow. They carried hope, hope that for once, she was not alone. The human leaned back against the wall, listening to the sounds of the ruined city beyond. He knew he had made a risky decision, one that might cost him dearly, but when he looked at the girl resting against him, fragile yet alive, he knew one truth. Even if the whole world turned against him, he would not regret saving her. Not for a single moment. The human woke early, the first pale light of dawn slipping through the cracks of the ruined walls. The little alien girl was still asleep beside him, curled up under a piece of cloth he had wrapped around her like a blanket. Her breathing was slow, her chest rising and falling with the fragile rhythm of life that clung to her body. He watched her for a long moment, the anger of yesterday still burning in his chest, but softened now by the sight of her peaceful face. Outside, the city groaned to life. Voices rose in the distance. Footsteps echoed across broken streets. But here, in the corner of this forgotten building, there was quiet. The human stood and stretched, his muscles aching from the long night of keeping watch. He knew the city was dangerous. He knew eyes had followed him when he carried the girl away. But he also knew he could not let her slip away now. Not when he had finally given her a reason to live. The girl stirred, her glowing eyes blinking open slowly. She turned her head and looked at him, a faint smile twitching at her lips, though her body was still weak. "You stayed," she whispered, her voice fragile but full of wonder. He knelt beside her and nodded. "I told you I would, and I keep my word." Her eyes watered, not with pain this time but with disbelief. "No one ever stayed before?" she said, her little voice shaking. "They all left, even when I begged." The human's jaw tightened, his heart heavy with anger at the cruelty she had endured. He reached out and brushed the dust from her cheek, his voice firm. "Then remember this, you are not alone anymore." He set about making the ruined shelter livable. He cleared the broken wood and metal, stacking scraps into a barrier against the wind. He found a rusted container outside and brought water, filling it so she could drink when she needed, from his pack. He laid out the last of his dried food, sharing half with her despite the hunger gnawing in his own stomach. The girl watched him, her glowing eyes following every movement. "You build this for me?" she whispered, still unable to believe it. He looked at her and smiled faintly. "For us, because we both need a place to belong." Her lips parted, and a soft sound escaped her. A laugh, small and broken, but real. When she ate, she did not scarf the food greedily. She held each bite carefully as if it was too precious to waste. She looked up at him between bites and asked, "Why do you care? Why give so much for someone you don't even know?" He paused, his eyes steady on hers. "Because I see something worth saving, even if your own people do not." Her hands trembled, her tears falling again. But this time they carried warmth instead of cold despair. As the day passed, he worked on fixing the walls, patching holes with whatever scrap he could find. He shaped a corner into a small bed of cloth and straw, making it softer for her frail body. Each action was simple, but to the girl it was like he was building her a whole new world. She whispered, "It feels like home." His chest tightened at her words, and he realized she had never truly known one before. He crouched beside her, his voice soft but strong. "Then let this be your first, even if it's made from broken pieces." Her little hand reached out, gripping his finger, her glowing eyes shining with gratitude. For the first time, she believed she was not a burden. She was someone worth protecting. But outside, danger stirred. Whispers spread in the city about the human who had taken the cursed child. Some laughed, saying he would be destroyed by her weakness. Others grew uneasy, muttering of omens and punishments, and some, darker and quieter, began to plan, their voices cold as stone. That night, the girl sat up weakly, looking out through a crack in the wall at the stars above. She spoke softly, almost to herself. "I used to dream that someone would come for me, that someone would hold me, but dreams always broke when morning came." The human sat beside her, following her gaze. Sometimes dreams wait for the right moment to become real. Her eyes turned to him, wide with fragile hope. "Is this real?" He nodded, his voice steady. "As real as my breath, as real as my promise to you." Her lips trembled, and then she smiled. A smile small and tired, but more beautiful than any jewel in the ruined city. She leaned against him, her body warm despite its frailty, her eyes closing as sleep claimed her again. And as she drifted off, she whispered a final word, soft as the wind, "Safe." The human sat there in the dim light, his back against the patched wall. His body was weary, his hands cut and dirty from building, but his heart was steady. He looked at the fragile child sleeping beside him, and for the first time in years, he felt like his life had meaning. But even as he sat in the quiet, he knew the shadows outside were waiting, and peace would not last. Still, inside this broken shelter, hope had been born, a hope that no crowd could destroy, no curse could erase. The girl who had been thrown away now had someone who saw her worth. And the human who had carried her from the dust had found something far greater than survival. He had found purpose. The ruined workshop stood quiet under the pale light of the twin moons. Inside, the human sat by the wall, his eyes heavy but alert, while the little alien girl slept peacefully for the first time in her life. Her tiny form curled beneath the cloth he had given her, her faint breaths soft as whispers. For a moment, the world felt still, like they were hidden away from all cruelty. But outside, the city did not forget. The whispers had spread like fire through dry grass. The human had carried the cursed child, the broken one, the girl that everyone had rejected. Some said he was a fool, others said he was dangerous, and still more began to feel fear. Fear made people cruel. In the taverns and dark corners, voices hissed. The human protects her. He defies our way. If he shelters her, he curses us all. He must be stopped before her sickness spreads. The laughter that once mocked him turned into anger, and that anger began to gather into footsteps. The girl stirred in her sleep, her glowing eyes flickering open as if she felt the unease in the air. She looked at the human, her voice soft. "Something is coming." He glanced at her, his jaw tight. "You feel it too?" She nodded weakly, pressing closer to him, her voice trembling. "They won't let us stay. They'll come to take me back." The human rested his hand on her shoulder, steady and warm. "No one will take you, not while I breathe," he said, his voice low but strong. Her small hands clutched at his sleeve, holding him as though he was the only wall between her and the world. And in truth he was. That night he heard them for the first time. Footsteps outside, slow and deliberate, like predators circling prey. Voices whispered through the cracks in the broken walls. "Is she here?" one asked. "She is. The human hides her," another answered, their tone sharp with hatred. The girl's body stiffened, her glowing eyes wide with fear. She pressed against him, trembling, whispering, "They know. They'll kill you for helping me." The human put a finger to his lips, silencing her, his own eyes scanning the shadows. The whispers outside grew louder, the footsteps drawing closer to the door. He stood slowly, careful not to make noise, his muscles tense. He picked up a rusted piece of metal, shaping it into a weapon with his hands. The girl clutched the cloth around her, watching him with terror in her eyes. "Don't fight them," she begged softly. "They'll hurt you, because of me." He turned to her, his eyes burning with fierce resolve. "They'll have to go through me first," he said, his voice sharp as steel. She shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm not worth it. Not worth dying for." His chest tightened, but he bent down, meeting her eyes. "You are worth more than they will ever understand." Outside, stones rattled against the walls, a sign, a warning. The human stepped forward, placing himself between the girl and the door. The whispers became snarls. "Human, give her to us. She is cursed. She is ours to throw away." The human's voice roared back. "She belongs to no one. She is not yours to abandon again." Silence followed, a silence heavy with rage. Then came laughter, cruel and sharp. "You think you can fight us all, one human against many?" The human's grip on the metal tightened, his eyes narrowed. "I've fought worse, and I've never once surrendered." The girl watched him, awe and terror mixing in her glowing gaze. The footsteps faded back into the night, but not in defeat. It was the sound of predators stepping away only to prepare for the kill. The human knew they would return, stronger, angrier, and more determined. He sat back against the wall, breathing slow, his mind sharp with the weight of what was to come. The girl crawled closer, weak but determined. She pressed her forehead against his arm, whispering, "I'm sorry you suffer because of me." He placed his hand gently on her head, his voice soft. "Don't be sorry. I chose this path." Her tears glistened in the faint moonlight, her voice breaking. "Then I'll try to be strong, even if my body fails me." The human looked at her, pride rising in his chest. "You already are strong," he said. "You've survived what would have broken many grown men." Her lips trembled, her eyes wide with the first flicker of belief. No one had ever called her strong before, yet from his mouth it sounded like truth. The night passed, but no rest came. Every creak of the walls, every whisper of the wind felt like danger drawing closer. The human knew tomorrow would bring a storm, not of weather, but of men. He knew the fight was not just for survival, it was for her right to exist. The girl leaned against him again, closing her eyes. She whispered as sleep pulled at her. "Promise me, you won't let go." His arms wrapped around her small form, steady as stone. "Not until my last breath." Outside, the city stirred, its anger rising like thunder. And soon, the storm would fall upon them both. The night was heavy with silence, the kind that carried warning. The human sat with his back to the wall, the broken alien girl resting close beside him, her glowing eyes half shut but full of fear. She clung to the cloth he had given her, listening to the whispers outside, whispers that grew closer, harsher, sharper. The city had decided it would not allow her to live, and it would not allow him to protect her. The first crash came suddenly. A stone slammed against the door, splinters breaking loose from the old wood. The girl gasped and pressed against him, her voice trembling. "They're here." The human rose to his feet, gripping the jagged metal bar he had shaped into a weapon, his eyes burning with determination. Another crash, this time louder. Shadows moved at the broken windows, dark figures circling the shelter like hungry wolves. Voices shouted, "Give her to us, human, and walk away alive." The human's voice thundered back, "She is not yours, and I will never give her up." The door shuddered under another strike. Then, with a sharp crack, it broke open, and 3 aliens stepped inside. Their eyes filled with hatred, their hands gripping crude blades. Behind them, more shadows waited, their laughter cruel and mocking. The girl screamed softly, her hands clutching at the bench, her broken legs shaking as if they felt the danger more than her heart did. The human stepped forward, his weapon raised. The first alien lunged, swinging his blade toward the human's chest. With a sharp movement, the human blocked the strike and shoved forward, his bar slamming into the alien's shoulder. The creature cried out, stumbling back, but the others rushed in, teeth bared. The fight became chaos. Metal clashed against metal, fists struck flesh, the air filled with grunts and shouts. The human fought like a storm, every movement fueled not only by survival but by something stronger. He had chosen this fight, chosen to protect her, and he would not falter. One alien slashed across his arm, blood spilling. The girl cried out, her glowing eyes wide. "You're hurt." He gritted his teeth, ignoring the pain, his voice steady. "Stay down. I'll hold them." He swung again, his bar smashing against another attacker's jaw, sending him crashing into the wall. But more poured in, shadows spilling through the door like a tide. The human's breath grew heavy, his body bruised and bleeding, but he did not fall. Every time they struck him, he rose again, his weapon flashing, his fists unyielding. He was only one man, but his will burned brighter than the fire of 100. The girl's heart pounded, tears streaming down her face as she watched. She felt useless, trapped, broken, unable to move. Her body was weak, but her spirit screamed, "No, I cannot let him die for me." Her hands shook, her chest heaved, and suddenly, deep within her, something stirred. A faint glow spread through her veins, brighter than before. Her body shook as if waking from a long sleep. She gasped, the air around her shimmering faintly, her small hands glowing with a light she did not understand. The attackers paused for a moment, their eyes narrowing. What is this? The human glanced back, his own eyes widening at the sight. The girl's whole body glowed faintly, a soft but powerful energy radiating from her frail form. Her voice trembled but grew stronger as she whispered, "Stop hurting him." The air pulsed, and a wave of light burst from her, slamming into the nearest attackers, sending them crashing back against the walls. Silence followed, broken only by their groans of pain. The girl's eyes glowed brighter now, though tears still streamed down her cheeks. "I am not a curse," she cried, her voice breaking. "I am alive, and I will not let you take him." The human's chest swelled with pride even as blood dripped from his wounds. The attackers staggered, their eyes wide with shock. One hissed, "Impossible, she was broken." Another whispered in fear, "Cursed no, she carries power." But their fear only made them angrier, and they lunged again, screaming. The human stepped in front of the girl once more, his weapon raised. Now, with her light behind him, he felt stronger, as if her spirit fueled his body. Together, they fought, not as protector and burden, but as two souls refusing to surrender. Every strike he made, her light answered, pushing back the darkness. Minutes felt like hours, but slowly, the attackers fell back, bruised, bleeding, and afraid of the glow that shone from the small girl they once called worthless. They cursed the human, shouting promises of revenge, but they retreated into the night. Their footsteps faded, leaving only silence and the heavy breathing of survivor and child. The human dropped his weapon, his body swaying. He fell to one knee, blood dripping from his arm and face, his chest heaving with exhaustion. The girl crawled toward him, her broken legs dragging painfully, but she reached him, her small glowing hands pressed against his wounds, whispering, "Don't leave me, please don't leave me." Warmth spread from her palms, faint but real. The pain in his body eased slightly, the bleeding slowed. He looked at her in shock, his voice rough. You healed me." Her tears fell onto his chest, her glowing eyes full of fear and hope. "I don't know how, but I couldn't let you die." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight despite the pain. "You're not broken," he whispered fiercely. "You never were." She sobbed into his chest, her light flickering but still glowing. And in that moment, they both knew. The fight was not over, but together, they had found a strength the city could not break. The night after the fight was long, filled with silence broken only by the wind through the ruins. The human sat against the wall, his arms wrapped tightly around the small alien girl, her faint glow still lingering in the dark. She trembled, her body weak, but her eyes were alive in a way they had never been before. She had felt power in herself for the first time, power she had never believed she carried. He brushed the dust from her hair, whispering softly, "Rest, you're safe now." Her lips trembled as she whispered back, "I thought you would die. I thought I'd lose you too." He tightened his hold, his voice rough but steady. "It will take more than them to stop me, not while I have you to protect." Her tears soaked his coat, but this time they were not only of fear. They carried relief, even joy. When dawn came, the city stirred again. News of the fight spread quickly, the whispers turning into shouts, some in fear, some in anger, some in awe. They said the broken girl had glowed like fire. They said the human had defied death itself. To many, she was still a curse, but to a few, doubt began to grow. The human knew they could not stay. The shelter had given them one night of peace, but the city's hatred would not rest. He gathered what little food remained, wrapping it in cloth. Then he turned to the girl, kneeling down in front of her, his voice gentle. "We have to leave. It's not safe here anymore." Her glowing eyes widened, fear flickering inside them. "Leave the city?" she whispered. "But where would we go?" He smiled faintly, though his eyes were tired. "Anywhere but here. Anywhere that gives you a chance to live." She hesitated, then nodded, her small hands clutching his arm. "If you go, I'll go." Her words were fragile, but they carried a strength deeper than she realized. They slipped into the broken streets as the sun rose higher. Everywhere they walked, eyes followed them, some glaring with hate, some whispering in fear. A few even lowered their heads in silence, as if unsure whether the girl was truly cursed or something else entirely. But none stepped forward to help, and none tried to stop them. Not yet. At the edge of the city, guards stood with weapons, their eyes narrowing as the human approached with the girl in his arms. "Stop," one barked. "You cannot take her beyond these walls." The human's jaw clenched, his grip tightening around the girl. "She is not your prisoner," he growled. "She is not your curse to throw away." The guards laughed, their blades glinting in the light. "She belongs to no one. She belongs to the dirt." One sneered. "And you, human, will share her fate if you continue this madness." The girl whimpered, her glowing eyes full of fear, whispering, "They'll kill us." The human looked down at her, his voice sharp as steel. "Then we'll face them together." The guards raised their weapons, stepping closer, but the girl's body trembled again, the faint glow spreading across her skin, brighter than before. The air pulsed with energy, a soft hum filling the silence. The guards froze, their faces pale as the glow wrapped around the small child they had once called broken. She raised a hand, though it shook, her voice steady this time. "I am not your curse." The light burst outward, not as a weapon, but as a wave of warmth and power. It washed over the guards, pushing them back, not harming them, but forcing them to lower their weapons. They staggered, eyes wide with shock, whispering, "Impossible." The human's voice thundered across the gate. "She is alive. She is strong. And she is mine to protect." Silence fell, no one dared move, and in that silence he stepped forward, carrying her through the gates, out of the city that had thrown her away. Step by step, he left behind the hatred, the cruelty, the voices that said she was nothing. Beyond the walls stretched the wild lands, dangerous but free. The girl clung to him, her voice trembling but full of wonder. We're outside." He looked at her, smiling faintly despite the blood still on his clothes. "Yes, and out here, no one decides your worth but you." Her tears fell again, but this time they carried only hope. They walked until the city was no more than a shadow behind them. The human found a quiet hill and set her down gently. She looked up at him, her glowing eyes wide with emotion. "You gave me what no one else would." He crouched in front of her, brushing her hair back. "What's that?" he asked softly. Her lips trembled into a smile. "A second chance." His chest tightened, his voice low but full of warmth. "And I'll give you 1,000 more if that's what it takes." She threw her frail arms around him, holding him with all the strength she had, and he held her back, his heart steady, knowing this was only the beginning. For she was no longer the broken girl crawling in the dust. She was the girl who had survived, the girl who had found light inside herself. And he was no longer just a wanderer. He was her shield, her protector, her family. Together, they walked into the unknown, leaving behind the city that had cursed her. The future was uncertain. Danger still waited in the world beyond. But they carried something stronger than fear. They carried hope. And as the wind whispered through the wild lands, the truth was clear. She had been the child no one would help, the child the world called broken. But now, She was alive, she was safe, and she was loved, because one human had seen her worth and given her what no one else dared. A second chance.